Crowd ever. This is our third installment of the Access Katz series. So we're really happy to have Senior Vice President and General Sales Manager for Katz Media and Katz Digital, Scott Porretti. He's going to present to the group and then open it to questions at the end.
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Susan. Wow, you guys will do anything to get out of work. All right, so before we get started, I thought I'd take the time to, for this meeting, and kind of, when I was thinking about how to present or what to take you guys through, I thought about some kind of different theming, and a lot of you guys, some as I look around, are either intimately involved in digital, some come from the radio side that know it, some TV, not as familiar. So I wanted to take a little bit of a look back in some of our history with the past, where we are today, what's working for us, and then spend a little bit of time on some of the things we're working at on behalf of Katz for the future and where we see this opportunity and things to go. All right, Paul? God bless you. All right. All right. Hold on.
Always makes me feel better when digital people have trouble working.
All right. So first of all, what is digital, right? So it's a term that you guys hear a lot, and we talk about it, and we know there's the spend going in that direction. But what exactly is it, and how do we interpret that word? For us, it's merely the content that is out there, that has been traditionally out there, whether it's a television or radio, and it's just delivered in a different mechanism. So it's really important for us to kind of have that focus. It helps us talk about what digital is, and it helps us identify what Katz's role in the digital space may be. Okay? A mission statement. This is something that we have in digital that we use to guide us. I'll take a second and read it to you guys. Increase Katz's value by expanding our path forward with progressive strategies and vital partnerships. Accomplish this by utilizing company talent, industry relationships, and our market position to take advantage of growing in the evolving digital space. So there's a couple of big themes in here. One is, it's around our value, right? So how we've always been and viewed at within the ecosystem of all media. We want to maintain that, we want to grow that as it relates to our customer base, but also as it relates to the clients and the partners that we have. We're going to do that through the vital partnerships that we set up, and we're going to take advantage of what we do, what we're great at, our relationships that we have, our value in agencies, and take advantage of as it relates to the digital space. Okay? Go. Go. All right, go. Back. All right. We look at, if we go back to the history, and I'll spend a couple minutes just talking to you guys about it, because as I chat with a few of you guys, some people don't realize that we've been at this for 10 years. In 10 years, Stu Olds and Katz bought a company called KatzNet Radio Sales. That's how we entered the space. At that time, it was 12 million listeners nationally, was what the audience looked like on a monthly basis. And it was a collection of 300 radio stations that were aggregated up together as a network. We then changed the name. We brought it in-house. We named it Katz 360. We took a guy that was in the traditional radio space, Brian Benedict. He went over and ran this company and rebranded it. We represented those asset bases, and we added Clear Channel that mix. In 2009, we brought Pandora in. We were the first people in the marketplace to get Pandora orders in National Spot. So a lot of people don't realize that, but we actually, some of the first orders they got came from us, right? So we kind of helped them set their strategy. 2010, we were a little too good at that, and we decided to disband that relationship. We initiated that and canceled that contract. Times were different then. Our ownership wasn't necessarily enthralled with the success that it could potentially have, and we pulled away from that relationship. The next set of 4 years was really a series of starts and stops as we defined it. So we had that Katz 360, the audience was growing. We brought in new talent. So we brought in this guy Mort. He came from the digital space and had a lot of experience in a bunch of different areas. He brought over his team, and he came from Nokia. They rebranded it, right? Katz had no value in digital. We're going to go to Proxy, and Proxy made everything around, and we're going to sell audio and video and mobile and display and all these kind of things. It was a little all over the place, and we were having trouble getting some success, but the audience was growing. We rebranded it, KRG Digital 2015, iHeart goes their own way, but we pick up Spotify. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because I see that as a real key point to us in our journey of success. 2016 through 2017, these are the recent years, we went back to our brand and our people. So we weren't about hire these digital people and radio people can't do it. We realized we had the expertise. It was easier to retrain our people. And it really is about Katz. Katz is valuable. Katz is valuable at agencies and with our customer base. And let's brand it. Not KRG, not Proxy, not 360, but Katz. And that's what we talk about when we're out there. All right. God, I wait every damn time. And here we go. All right. Technology. Technology is driving audio, right? And it's really been our friend. I think people get afraid of it, but it really is it really has been a benefit to audio. And you see massive consumptions of it. We call it the renaissance. More people are listening to audio today than ever before. Big things that have happened over 20 years, and it happens to work out this way. If you go back in time 20 years, desktop computers that really started driving it. When we talked about that net radio sales, it was really about streaming on your desktop, and you can now listen to internet radio stations. So Napster was big then, if you guys remember, some of the folks that were in that space, and there was a lot of things evolving around music. 2007, the iPhone, right? I mean, who would have thought that would have been really, that replaced the old Walkman? And that's massive consumption is going to take place through that. And I tell you, we've got the next kind of innovation that is as transformational, I believe, in these smart speakers and sound, right? And be able to talk and engage with things. I mean, for those of you that have, who has Alexas or Google Homes in their home? Right? I mean, I don't know how you use it, but it's changed everything. It's also made us listen to more, right? You bring the radio back to the living room and the bedroom and all these kind of places that you have it. So it's been awesome for audio. Technology is audio's friend. It's made people more excited about it than ever. Susie, did you back there? Can you just click it?
Yeah.
All right. An aha moment that we talk about. We take this out on every pitch. Digital audio is expanding, and everybody kind of knows that, right? But it has not come at the expense of radio. Radio is still growing, right? And we're up 31 million since 2003, really kind of the birth of digital audio. At the same point, digital audio is skyrocketing. The aha moment is what that time spent is actually replaced as personal music collection. So you don't have the cassette players and CDs and MP3s and all those things. People are turning to music services to engage with that. Ad spending is evolving. 38% of every dollar that gets spent at agencies is in digital, right? So we've seen a massive shift. The trend lines continue to push that way. 50% is forecasted by 2020 in terms of dollars moving there. Those are the big holding companies that exist in the space. It's not the arm flowers.
Scott, did you just want me to do it?
Yes. One more back. All right, it does. So this is also we talked a little bit about technology. This is the way people listen to radio right now. These are all portals, the way you access it. Where now over 20% of all radio listening is done digitally, and the smart speaker is going to expand that much more dramatically. Go and go again, please. All right. 7-step action plan. We saw all of these trends happen. Changes to listening, changes to ad spending, changes to technology. It's all moving around us. So what did we do to respond to that? One, greater engagement from leadership. So we're at that position when Mort was here, and you remember that, and it was housed outside of our group, and should we really spend time on it? We really looked at that opportunity for us, and we became much more engaged. So we brought it back within radio. It wasn't going to be its own company. We made investments in technology, as Joe knows, right? Some big investments that we did. We engaged our core partners. We looked at, we selling everybody who they're going to be core to us, and we engaged them much more aggressively. And we committed ourselves to the space, knowing we were losing money, knowing it was painful, but knowing it was important for what we could do to achieve success. Number two, we restructured our approach to sales. That was really important. Most of the billing that we had was really not even coming from our local base. It was coming from national, where the marketplace was. So we looked at our expertise and we said, we're local, and that's what we're going to focus on, and we did that. We empowered our sellers. Everybody within radio has the opportunity to sell digital. So we empowered them to really push for it. We didn't have this separate team that was doing that. And internally, we really took on the internal team, the ad ops and planning team, we restructured that. And what we looked at, we put director positions in place, and we looked at how we were doing that on a by office basis and made some good moves there. And really important for us, we created this role called the Director of Digital Sales, right? So DDoS or whatever that we never use. But that's a point person in every office that was going to help steward the business and be the advocate within their offices, and that's been enormously successful. 2, 3. Internal opportunities for growth, so that's a hot one for me, right? I mean, I've been here almost 20 years. I want to see people look at our company and see opportunities to thrive and grow, and digital's been a great product for that we've been able to do. So internally for people, okay, Lisa, right, the training, the education, it's been really exciting for people to learn something new, learn those skills and get out there and go ahead and sell them. So radio AEs become audio AEs. New digital leadership, right? So I look at some people on our team, and Matt's the director of ad ops, and we've got Emily's director of planning, and Shannon's up there somewhere, director of accounts. So these guys have kind of stepped up and into bigger roles and done an excellent job and kind of grew from within. And again, we talked about that director position, that sellers and managers that really just wanted to take an additive role and get more involved and learn, and have really risen to the occasion. 4, we made investments in technology, because all of this shit needs to work, right? So all of this needs to, how do you work with all these guys? It is unbelievably complex. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but I cannot tell you how complex the process is. We partnered up with somebody to build us a platform. We call it the Katz platform. Super fancy name, right? But basically what that does is it talks to all of these systems that allow us to forecast and plan and steward the business. So it allowed us to grow much more rapidly, and really there's a whole layer in it about targeting. For those of you that sold it 3 years ago, it was a call letter and wherever it landed. Now we can serve in-market, by zip, all kinds of behavioral targeting, all of these things that we can now do, which make us much more competitive for the marketplace. Next. 5, the customer experience. It was terrible. We never delivered campaigns. No one ever went out on calls. So we made countless sales calls. We went out, we talked to people. What's working, what's not? What's the competition doing? How can we be better? How do we help? We started delivering on our campaigns. Basic thing, right? Because in digital, it really doesn't matter. You pay for what delivers, but we understand the broadcast world. Even if it delivers at 99%, that means it's a scrap, and the buyers don't like the scraps, and so we don't want to have that. So we made some changes internally to make sure that we delivered better. You can't sell, get this win, and then not care about the back end. How they invoice and how that process finishes is the last way that a customer feels about you. So if you do that poorly, they don't feel good about moving forward. So it's really important to us that we've done that. We've really fixed a lot of those issues. And the other thing is, we got rid of stupid acronyms, right? So it's all about, for us, translating digital words and making it easy for the customer to really, when they talk about uniques, that's really just Q. And so we try to put it in language that we understand and that our customer base understands. Next. We leverage the growth. So that whole chart, when I was talking about the year's timeline, the one consistency was we kept growing. So the consumers were coming there and doing that. Broadcast streams have grown in the last 2 years over 20%. So more people are using that. We call it organic growth. So we've been able to leverage that. There's been a shift with broadcasters away from simulcast. They're getting into the game. They're starting to see the value of digital and how important that audience is. And by the way, there's a whole talk that I could do around what you could do with those traditional commercial pods that groups are starting to understand. Inject in more audio content, do different things, make the experience for listeners so much better. And I finally think some groups are getting wise to that and stewarding the digital listening experience. We can deliver 25 to 40 GRPs in a marketplace. Right? So for those of you that know where we were 3 years ago, we were around 5. That is a massive amount of inventory that we have. Few people buy 40 grips in a given marketplace. That's on 25, 54, 18, 49. You tighten that demo up, we can deliver close to 100 points of men or women or any of the younger demographics. 7, and what I think is our largest one, really kind of took us to a whole different level for us, is Spotify. So I'm going to go on the assumption that most of you know what Spotify is or know what the product is. We started the relationship a couple years ago. It's been very beneficial for us, but it's really kind of allowed us to engage with the customer base of the agencies at a whole different level. So I got a few slides on that. One is it's the world's largest audio platform, right? So I think sometimes in the US we think about Pandora and you know what that means and that battle, and Pandora's a little bit larger. Spotify dominates globally, right? So when you think about just overall listening and what that means to the music industry, what that means to different markets and how it is they dominate. In the US, it's tripled in 3 years. So we've gone from 23 million 3 years ago up to 70 million. It's a big number and a lot of growth. So more consumption's happening that way. It started very millennial, right? And now it's moved up to all kinds of demographics. And when you see on the older end, you're actually seeing higher percentages as more people engage with that product. We grew with Spotify, and I think that's important. So the obvious one is our audience jumped, right? So we had 100 million monthly uniques, you know, so huge audience every month. That jumped to 160. So that's a really big differential for us. It opened doors. So, you know, I could list them out for you, but a ton of direct shops that we now work with. A ton of new advertisers that have never used audio before and now are brought to the sector because they think it's cool and being able to do that. It benefits our legacy partners because oftentimes Spotify, and for those of you that have sold it and gotten close to it and what the brand means, it gets us into a meeting and gets us with an audience that the traditional base just wouldn't have. It's not a negative about radio, but a lot of times our customers or the agencies, they know radio, they're comfortable with it, they know its value and they know it's good, but sometimes this gets you to a higher meeting. And our goal is in sales, how do we leverage that audience for the broader group of assets that Katz has? We're very conscious about doing that. Increase our relevance. People think about us different, right? We're invited to different things and we're able to kind of get in meetings with clients that we've struggled with in the past. And then we're able to better compete. Not only compete better with iHeart on an RFP in a marketplace, but just compete better on behalf of audio with other budgets and other things that are out there. So it brings us to the table in a much more aggressive way. We picked the right partner, right? So I told you that how we brought Pandora to market and we had that relationship. Turns out, history proves itself to be a pretty good spot for Katz. Yes?
Can we ask questions?
Yeah, you go. Yeah, sure.
Howard, Katz Radio. I was, a couple questions. First, simple one. Does Spotify have their own sales force too?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Yeah, so we have, I put up their exclusive partnership, and this is really important because as the marketplace evolves and gets defined, I think it's going to be a roadmap for how things move forward. We have an exclusive agreement with them to represent them in local markets out of broadcast agencies or agency business.
Okay.
So they have a smaller direct team that they call, all recruited out of digital, all very savvy with what the digital world is, and calling on some larger national or network play business, right? That they have legacy business that they have.
And selling more than audio.
What?
And
absolutely selling more than audio, right? So they go in and they try to work with Unilever on a large platform of multiple touch points and large, $5 million programs that they're going in there to try to do. And what we do is we transact them in local markets and use them to compete against Pandora and other people in the marketplace.
I have two more questions.
Sure.
I can ask you. Where is Spotify versus Apple Music in pecking order? Is Apple Music bigger?
Well, so Apple Music is not commercial, right? So there's no inventory that's able to sell, but Spotify's bigger.
Okay.
About twice the size.
Yeah.
More
So
than
Spotify's direct competitor is more of Pandora than Spotify.
Yeah, now they look at it different. They will look at their competitors as Apple, because again, a lot of their revenue is based on actually subscription, which is that arena, but that's a different arena that we will play on as we work with more advertising and marketing budgets.
So then my final question, I had this conversation with a colleague of mine just recently. It's interesting. I happen to have Spotify. I used to have Apple Music.
Okay.
And I changed to Spotify for whatever reasons. And, but we were talking, it's interesting, I don't pay for Spotify. I use the free. And I download the music that I want to listen to and listen to the music that I want to listen to. So I'm not hearing any advertising. So my question is, how a person like me versus the person that's, I guess, subscribing and listening to the subscription-based stations that is on Spotify.
So the only way you're not getting commercials is if you pay for it. So otherwise, you're listening to one song, you're shut off.
I don't get any commercials. I download Apple.
You have to pay to get that. You have to pay. Someone else is paying.
Oh yeah, my mistake. You know what? To your point, it's so nominal. It's like $15 a month. So I forgot. I
You
had to
do
pay.
pay.
I can't help
question first.
You know what, I realize you're So but my question is then,
It should be $10.
how many, so I don't hear commercials listening to music the way I'm listening to it.
Yeah.
And I am a subscription person. So my question is, how do those numbers?
So it's 80-20. 80 free in the US, 20% paid for it. Those numbers are out of the equations here. You're in a whole separate bucket. You pay for it,
Yeah.
you consume it, they get your money, you're not in this anything here.
Oh,
You're off on
so
the
if I'm
side.
not paying for it, then I would get commercials no
Right.
matter what I'm listening to.
And those
Right.
are the users that are flagged.
That's the users we're talking about, right?
That's where I was curious.
And that breaks out roughly 80-20. 80 in the US do not pay for it, 20% do.
Really? Wow, that's interesting, all right.
All right.
That's
But it's very few commercials compared to anybody else.
Right, all right, so, and anybody can always jump in with questions, so I'm glad to answer those. Okay, so we talked about the right partner, everything's moving up. Total usage is moving up, the greater experience, millennials is definitely moving up, we're seeing the competition move down, right, which is good for us. Next. Howard, you'll like this. So these are some of the different I did this for you, Howard. I did this for you. Okay, so what are the differences, right? There's two audio giants that we talk about in the marketplace, and there's really only two that matter in the commercial space, okay? And that's found Spotify and Pandora. Spotify's younger, right? By, what is that, 9-year mark, okay? Spotify's actually moved up over the last 2 years. It was 24, so it's jumped, so you've seen that evolve. It's more affluent. Now part of that is because the audience is a little bit smaller, so it's like for those of you that sell smaller audiences or a AAA as we say in radio, sometimes those qualitative is a little bit better. Growing, so it's up dramatically where Pandora is actually down. Geo-targeting, which is a huge point, again, those of you that know it, but the way, I always love doing this at a meeting, we did it with PhD, just this week. You go in and the way the way Pandora targets is based on your registrations. If you put a zip code in, whenever you did it 10 years ago, it's always going to serve to wherever that zip code is. They never update that. Spotify uses the same technology that we do in the broadcast streams, all via IP address. So it's a big differentiator. We were sitting there with Gene Boland and with Grace Collins. Both of them had signed up for it at some different point and trying to figure out why they're getting ads from Florida or some other thing. And we talked about that. So again, that's a big point of differentiation. I think Elisa said it, a lot less commercials. Content, 30 million tracks versus 1 million, and a lot of it's engagement, which is really important for us, how the listener uses Spotify, because it much better mirrors up with our broadcast streams. The broadcast streams, it's just radio on a different device. People are engaged, right? Whether it's personalities, whatever's driving it. Next. The present, so all of that, we've got some results, with the 7-step action plan, there are actually things that came from that. Growth, right? So what has happened over the stagnant period where we kind of sat around $6-7 million of billing, a lot of it national, we implemented some of those things, we're up 233% in terms of revenue. That's top line billing growth. Bottom line is even at a higher, much more aggressive, 300-400% advancements there. 11 straight quarters of dramatic growth. So we chart every quarter. Where are we going? How are we moving forward? All that moves up. Up 25% in the latest quarter. Advertisers, 442 advertisers. Back in that 10-year period, it was 8 or 9. 274 agencies or direct clients. 123 new advertisers already this year that have never spent with us. And so we chart that. At the same point, the audience continues to grow. AM/FM up 34 million people. Spotify up 44 million people. All of our main competition is down. Next. I love this slide, it's super obnoxious, right? But it's designed to be obnoxious because what it says, and again, if you look at this from 2014 on, we used to struggle to find a couple. I'd say, Maggie, get rid of that category because we don't have enough there. Now, this is not all of our advertisers. These are just ones that we mark up there. Every category we're loaded up. All of them spending more, all of them continue to drive business with us. Next. We now reach 95% of all streamers. That is a big stat, right? That's the combination of the broadcast streams and Spotify together. That's what we're boasting right now. I put up some other charts so you guys can see what does that compare. This is our total audience. The broadcast streams are big. Spotify, 72 million. Pandora's still larger, and the largest pure play, 86 million, and iHeart sits in there at 36 million. They're kind of holding the ground. Next. How does that rank in total digital? We would be the 9th largest digital media property, right? When you look at our audience. That's bigger than Snapchat, Twitter, it's bigger than Apple, right? In their whole ecosystem. So that is a big deal. Part of it, the challenge is we have to brand Katz because no one's heard of it. So a lot of times we're taking some of these story points and we're going to people to tell that story, and we're finding new ways to do it all the time, but it's a great story to get out there and tell. Next. We're the only audio everywhere platform everywhere, okay? So every device, desktop, laptop, smartphone, tablet, gaming, smart speakers, connected cars, we're in all of those environments. Every geography, we can do by the nation, by country, we can do by state, DMA, metros, county, down to the zips. All of those ways we can target by audience into certain geo zones. Every platform, pure plays, we're going to talk about podcasting, we're in that space. Every ad server, that's the ad tech technology, we can serve to it all. No one else can do that. And then obviously every demographic, age, gender, any kind of vertical that you can imagine, we're able to serve that through. We always think it starts big, we amass as much scale as possible, and then you drill down and are able to serve across all markets and any target. Howard, you're itching.
This was easy. Is podcasts a growing sector?
No, it's falling apart. No, it's growing. I'm going to talk about it. Hold it, I'm going to talk about it. No. All right, how do we do business? Everything we do is in-house, everything. Everything is turnkey to the seller, right? And that's when we talk about internally to the group. We always try to make sure that the seller feels it's turnkey, but I promise you it is not turnkey, okay? It is very difficult and very challenging. We have an excellent team, for those of you, a lot of them are here. They work their asses off on behalf of all of us. And they care, right? And there's a lot that goes into it. And a lot of what we do is new. It's never been done. So sometimes we're in the office talking about, I've never had this one before. What do we do and how do we handle that? We're working with all kinds of different digital companies and partnering up. And so a lot of that stuff we kind of learn on the fly. But the process is pretty turnkey. I mean, the seller gets in a veil. They give that to the planner. The planner uses that technology to build a proposal. And we take everything we pull within our systems and convert that to radio language, right? So we do that. The research piece, and for those of you guys, special shout out to Maggie. First of all, Maggie helped design this deck and did a kick-ass job, so thank you for that. Whoever sits next to Maggie, I mean, you just hear us yelling at each other all day. So, because we're very...
The two of us screaming at each other, non-stop.
But some great work comes out of that, and I will tell you, like, every proposal is customized. Every pitch that we do is we can build it. Maggie builds decks for everything that we go out there and do, so she's an integral part about that proposal piece. The order comes down, right? We have call letters that we assign to it, but then we have to break it down in terms of the pieces, building blocks that we put together.
I feel like that was a very underrated, huge difference maker.
What, David?
The call letters. I know that sounds like that was the hardest part at the beginning because the buyers had no clue how to put it in their system.
Yeah.
That's all it took, and that has been a huge...
Yeah, and I thank you for saying that. I think you're right. I mean, when we looked at that easy button in terms of, like, that's one of the things that came back. I want to buy you, but I don't know how. So we had to figure that out and set that up. But we deconstruct that buy and put it back in. I mean, ad ops. Anybody know what ad ops means? Ad operations, right? That is a piece probably that you guys are the least familiar with, but is super critical to what we do. And that's Matt and Mark and Tom, if he's up here somewhere. Tom. But those guys do an unbelievable job. We have to take that order, then we have to put it in our CAT system, then we have to traffic right into these other ad servers to make sure all that stuff is set up and runs right. Again, integral part of the job when we maintain it there. Creative. If you listen to streams, I promise you will hear Bob Case on every other spot. It's either Bob Case or Bob Case's wife on every spot. So the guy's awesome. He works with us. He's got a history with us. He creates all of our spots. And turnkey gets that stuff done. That's big value for the agency customers that we work with. Because again, we do all of that trafficking. And then it's not over then. We have to report on it. We have to get that stuff to the agencies. We have to monitor things to make sure we're optimizing those campaigns. And then the invoicing piece. And Shannon brings that all together and orchestrates that in a way that is dramatically better than it's ever been with more and more volume piled on. So those are key pieces. Next. Other contributors, because we're not just alone. I mean, I see Joe here, CIS, I mean, we meet almost religiously. I mean, not enough for Joe, he loves to spend time with me. But it always comes down, we've got a great team, Jody, you canceled on me, I'm not gonna forget that. And we meet on a basis, and we talk about, all right, how do we make things better, and how can we improve things? And they've done awesome behind the scenes stuff to make our process better. Huh? Oh, Chelsea, where is she? Oh, there she is, thank you, Chelsea. You know, we've got marketing, so Karen Carice, like these guys are helping come up with some, you know, ideas and stuff that we do. Talked about the digital DOSs in every office who have been key. Accounting, you know, we have 2 people that are assigned to accounting to handle that stuff. Billing and invoicing stuff is not easy, and they do a really good job, and that's Joanna Daniels that help us out there. And Scott Taylor in Chicago really helps us steward a lot of the publisher stuff, pulling the reports, putting stuff together, and allowing us to sell back and engage with our broadcast groups in a really positive way. So it's a lot of people behind the scenes helping us. How do we target campaigns? How do we do that? This is a complicated thing, but I thought I'd simplify it with, we have access to through those systems into every major DMP that exists globally, right? So all of our impressions are filtered. These are the biggest data companies on the globe, right? All Silicon Valley, big companies, you know, Oracles and you know, Adobe's and these big companies. We filter all of our impressions through that, and that's how we're able to target and know who we're targeting and how that stuff works. So again, we can have that. We get pretty intimate in terms of what we do with campaigns. Contractors, Lisa comes with route lane contractors in Dallas. So sometimes we don't want to sell that, right? We have the ability to do it, but we like to sell broad in terms of taking advantage of the marketplace, but we have data. Next.
Scott, I have a question.
Sure.
What kind of progress have you made with behavioral targeting and all that information? Because with radio, we can use Scarborough. At some point last year, we didn't really have a lot of that. How have we?
That's that.
So we
Slide
have.
before.
So what kind of categories can we talk about now? Anything?
Any.
People that buy crap.
Yeah.
So wait, I will tell you, it is pretty vast in terms of what we can target. The challenge is, quite frankly, everybody loves that. So you'll have, like, I'm teasing because Kara's big into trying to find the one person somewhere, and they try to drill down. So the sales conversation is, that's not, you're looking for audience, right? You're looking for some reach. When you drill down that much, you're narrowing your scale almost to such a point that it doesn't even make sense to run that targeting. So Scarborough in radio looks at how audiences index. You're still buying the whole audience. We try to come up with similar ways in digital to look at what the audience looks like. So for Spotify, for example, they say they want people making over 100,000. We'll fight that layering on. We try to take advantage of the whole audience by saying our median income is 148, right? So the audience is in that category and over indexes by that amount. Sometimes we use MRI data to really look at what audiences and genres look like. So we have the capabilities, but how we execute that, when we do, and if it makes sense, especially in local markets, you know, sometimes we want to be smart and more sophisticated about how we use the technology we have. So it's not always as simple as that, but we absolutely have the ability to drill down with thousands of levels of targeting. Cool, you're welcome. Everybody gets hung up on this, less today than there ever was, but you don't need ratings in digital. I mean, that's kind of how it works, right? So how do we do it? We use ComScore to show scale. I mean, luckily with the branding that we have and the product that we have, while we show it, we don't really need to. We don't have to do a lot of selling, right, that Spotify's big, right? I think people know it. They can read articles, they see it, they feel it, they see their friends, you know, parents, kids, whatever, engaging on it. And the broadcast streams, we do tell that story a little bit more, but we've got an enormous amount of scale, and I think they know when it's CBS and cumulatively, and we're bringing all these groups together, that there's obviously a lot of scale that way. It's real-time impressions that's the currency. So it's not you write down your diary or things like that. We know, we see it firing. We see impressions firing in real time. So we have to optimize against that. So you're getting what you pay for. So that takes a little, we've gotten the marketplace kind of understanding that right now, but those are some of the more historical hurdles that we've moved beyond. Remember, even these guys at iHeart, they signed some deal with Triton Ratings, and they basically thought we were dead because we don't have ratings. And we said, we don't really need that. We've got what we need to write business, and I don't think we've taken a step back at all. In fact, I think we're better because of it, because we're able to tell our own story and then sell the scale that we have. Next. All right, we have some unique offerings or opportunities that were kind of like subsets of the larger piece, and we'll talk briefly on this. First of all, Unidos, okay? We have the largest Hispanic offering in the marketplace, right? It is, every time we're in a meeting, I always bring it up and put a slide on it, and it always gets some reaction. Again, just last week, right? We talked about it. Oh, you really have that? I didn't know that, right? And Hispanics over-index in terms of audio consumption to local stations, under-index in terms of pure play, and over-index in terms of mobile usage where a lot of this is taking place. It is the only area that we sell iHeart, right? So we talked about we don't sell them, but in this offering we do, right? So we bring everything together. Univision leads that. That's the largest source of audio impressions, but we're tapping into CBS Hispanic, Spotify, SBS, and Univision as part of that. But an awesome offering and really untapped. We're doing, you know, maybe a couple $1 million in this arena. I think this could easily go to 10, easily, if we get out there and sell
It's
it.
differentiated because Pandora can't actually target Spanish language, Spanish speaking.
That's right, that's right. So Pandora is always, we're gonna try it, they go to Pandora. Pandora can't target by ethnicity. So they do it by genre, and they're very liberal with their genres in terms of what they target Hispanics for, if you guys have used that. We don't know either if you're Hispanic. We're just making a pretty good leap if you're listening to Spanish language content that you're Spanish. Right, but we're honest about that, and I think it's a pretty good story to be in that environment. Howard.
Just curious, why is Pandora, it seems like so far behind relative to Spotify, and do you see them kicking it up or maybe eventually even going away?
I think they're ahead because they've been in the marketplace in terms of dollars. They've been at the marketplace longer than Spotify.
Right.
They're different products. They have different goals overall. Spotify is much more of an engineering and technology platform that amasses a lot of, it's all about the audience, data, digital, and so they have a different thought. Pandora is much more, they want to be radio on the internet. So they're different in culture and they're different in actually product lines. But as far as sales go, Pandora's been out there at it longer, and there's a lot of areas, and I'll talk a little bit about it because they are an important competition point, where they become the Kleenex of digital audio. Are you doing digital audio? Yeah, I do Pandora. Is that all you're doing? Yeah, that's digital audio. And there's a lot of opportunity in that for us to break that down. And some of it is just because the growth has been so fast. I mean, Spotify's gone up, what was it, 40 million people? I mean, that happened. So you lay in your budget, you do your planning for the next year, and you think you've got it right, and all of a sudden the world changes in a 12-month span.
Did that growth from Spotify, some of it come from Pandora and Apple? I know I was an Apple user, now I'm a Spotify.
Yes, but a lot of it's just growth to the space, right? So a lot of it's just more audio is being consumed, so people are kind of jumping on it. But you definitely see I started with Pandora, I'm kind of over that, I migrate and move over to Spotify. There's a story there, which we've seen. All right, next. Podcasts, right? So this year we introduced a product called Podcats, kind of a play on the cat's words and play on podcast. We see this as a big opportunity. We are still in the learning mode, right? The marketplace is. There's a lot of noise about it. There's a lot of problems and challenges with the marketplace, but we've planted our flag in the ground, and we're going to be in this space. I think it was you, Howard, that was asking where it is. I mean, it's growing. So it reaches right now 24% of the U.S. population. It's growing 3 times the rate of streaming. Now, it's kind of where streaming was 8 years ago, right? So there's been some change. It's at its early stages, and when you're at your early stage with smaller audience, you have higher growth percentages. So we're expecting that. But there's an enormous rush into the space with content. That's part of the challenge too. I mean, it's amazing how many people are coming up with their own podcasts, small ones, and big brands, publishing brands, all kinds of different. New York Times is usually the top 3 podcasts that's out there right now, and so they're a huge player in the audio space. NPR kind of dominates it, still 50% of all listenings to NPR, but there's a lot of upside for it.
What's their metric? Who measures them? Who's measuring?
Yeah, so there's not what's the company that's out there though that? Podtrack. So there's some companies that, it's not. And there's not a lot, I mean, from a scale standpoint, if you've kind of got it on your phone, if you go to iTunes and podcasts, you can pull the top 20. So a lot of it is that, and there was a stories actually this week about, Apple's finally going to release some of the data, because 80% of podcasting comes from Apple, You know, not theirs, but them as a portal
Right.
and that content. And so there's not a lot, they're finally starting to share how long do people listen, what goes through. So besides a ranker of what's listening that week, there's not a lot of data there. The individual podcasters know, because they can monitor what's consumed on their own, but there's nothing aggregating that together.
24% is in Scarborough has roughly the same numbers as in the vague overall, but they don't give you real useful sales.
Got it. Thank you.
And there's also a lot, like, it's pretty much separated. So first of all of it was downloaded 2 years ago, right? Everything was downloaded, and that creates problems from when is my ad served? And what about if you downloaded it today and you listen to it 3 months from now, it's not timely. There's been a huge movement towards streamed content. In fact, when you go to your iPhones, like, you'll see it. Most of it's all streamed. You actually have to download it if you're going to plane or to consume that product. What that's allowed for is a greater, and there's a lot more noise around dynamic ad insertion. Still, the majority of dollars spent on podcasting is sponsored, right? Sponsorship or underwriting, or when you listen to podcasts, hey, Lagunitas is going to, you'll hear these different brands, or Blue Apron, that I think sponsors every podcast that's out there. But you'll see Comcast is in that game now. Bank of America has been in that game. Chase is in that. I mean, a lot of these big brands, as a big podcasting consumer myself, I'm hearing a lot of these brands jump on board. So we want to play. I don't think what's right for us right now is the individual sponsorship of podcasts. I think we don't have the time. There's an opportunity cost for doing that. But where we absolutely can't play is dynamic ad insertion. So when people are streaming podcasts, we can insert ads into that in real time. So it's a personalized, it's not you're all listening to the same ad that's sponsored. The ad that Joe is going to get is different than the ad that Kerry's going to get, even though they're consuming the same podcast. And it's dynamically done in real time to the time that the advertiser wants. So a lot going on here. Again, we're students of it. We're following it very closely. There's a lot of noise about it, but I promise you Katz is going to be in that space, and we're going to take a big role. Next. Audience extension. So we have this. It's not core to what we do. Remember, we're focused in on audio, for right now, and I think that's why we've been successful. But we sell mobile campaigns, mobile display. We've done, a sizable amount in that. Database marketing, which is basically email that's gone out. We've done a bunch of campaigns in that. We just sold some display. Somebody just sold it today. Or Asano just sold a nice display campaign that we just routed through. Buyer asked us, do you have display? Sure, we got it. We put it together and we sell it. Video. So we tap into some, really it's programmatic inventory. We're rebuying in the marketplace to bundle that and repurpose that and sell it at decent margins. So again, not core right now, but when an advertiser, we see this stuff as very, for those on the radio side, Katz partnership-esque. So if you're talking to an advertiser and they want to tap into certain things, we have that capability. And the hope is that those capability points make us more valuable to the customer who wants a one-stop shop. Next. All of this makes Katz unique, right? So all of what we talked about, unparalleled scale, no one can touch us. Service and relationships, we're damn good at that, right? And by the way, that was an enormous learning thing for me with Spotify, is to talk about the direct sellers. Nowhere. They burned a ton of relationships. They didn't get back on time. We're really good at this, and that's unique for us. We have audio expertise. We understand the space better than anybody does. Sometimes we're uncomfortable with the word audio because we're radio, and that's where our company's kind of been based. But it's the largest component of audio. We understand it better than anywhere else. We have these exclusive capabilities that make us unique. Next. We're done with the present. We're going to move on to the future. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about what it's short-term and then long-term, because I often think of it, in those terms, what we need to accomplish in a 6-month period, but also where do we want to keep an eye to the future? Where do we see opportunities growing for us?
I just asked you to put back
Sure.
the podcast. Who's our competition there? Is there's one person going and selling?
Yeah, so National Public Media, so NPM, right? The NPR, those guys are very sophisticated, good technology, and they're out there. iHeart is pushing their own podcasts, and they're out there trying to sell some stuff in terms of what that marketplace looks like. Pandora is out there selling their podcasting inventory. Spotify's actually making a big push for it. Where's Mark? We have that Avela, right, out of Universal McCann for the Spotify podcast, who happens to be our agency. So they're trying to get in that business. So I think there's a lot of people out there. There is Scripps owns a company called Midroll, which produces content and is out there also selling podcasts across that network, and they own an app called Stitcher, so they're out there with a heavy presence. And then there's Podcast One, which is partially owned by Hubbard, and so that's where we got Adam Carolla, and there's a guy out in Norm Pattis on the West Coast that he started actually Westwood One, so that's where the Podcast One comes from, and he's out there trying to monetize that content. A lot of them, though, are based on subscriptions and nurturing podcasts and then trying to get people to subscribe. Again, I think there's an opportunity in volume to sell it. I think our own niche, if you think of where we're defined and where we bring value, is that local market expertise to the buyer. So where we plan is to have all these conversations with these guys, and it doesn't make sense for you to hire all these people and be in the space. It's kind of taking that Spotify conversation to big companies, and then us being able to bring that scale to market. All right, short-term goals. Revenue expansion. So when you have a growing business, you just got to grow faster, right? I mean, that's the expectation. So how do we continue to grow? We're very focused on that, bringing in new advertisers. Go. Advertiser expansion. So we look at that metric all the time internally. How many more can we do? I mean, I think it was 132 was the new advertiser we brought in. Our goal at the beginning of the year was 250 of new advertisers we would bring on. So we're kind of in line with that. We're trailing it a little bit. We got to make sure that we pick that up. But how do we bring new advertisers on? And every time we get a new advertiser, we immediately think about, all right, who are the competitors that aren't on our streams that we can then tell the other people to go out and try to get them on. So trying to be smarter about that. Next, target the competition. That's really important for us. I mean, we kind of look at it, through one lens. If you go one slide more, Susie, please. This is our biggest competition. And a lot of it is because they're taking so much money out of the marketplace. The estimation is they're pulling $400 million out of the local marketplace. Local for us, national spot, but also local in terms of, local banks and, local, car dealerships and things like that. That is a big number, right? Now, part of it is they're first in and they're, they've gotten themselves established and they had a big brand and they didn't have a lot of competition. But while they're our number one target, I obsessively think about that this is our number one opportunity. We've got the scale, we've got the cooler brand, right, in Spotify. We've got the manpower in terms of selling expertise to go do that. We just got to attack it in a better way, right? Make sure that we know. It's sometimes harder because in radio, and I don't know how TV is, but we can see what the competition is writing. We get these RER reports and you can target by accounts. Can't do that. So we go old school. We have people assigned in offices to listen to Pandora. Do we have them? No. Let's see if we can go after that and be smart about that. But that's a big number, and I often hope, I hope people take that personal. A lot of that's come out of our pocket, over the years. So I really look at Spotify and what we're doing here in digital as an opportunity to take it back and accelerate that growth in a much more dramatic way with a good product. All right? So you got to be really focused on it. Next. Meet partners' expectations. So, working on a little of that today. But, the goals that we have, whether it's Spotify and the reviews, because while it all looks rosy, they want more, and they expect more, and they believe that. So there's a lot of challenges as we get into that. How are we doing for CBS? Because they're about to pick up Entercom, and we want them feeling really good. We get more revenue from that standpoint. Cox just signed up, and so that's great. We got them in the dance, and now every week they want to know where the revenue is and what advertisers that they're on. And I could go on and on and on. Univision, countless meetings. Why are we getting the revenue? We're sitting with them again tomorrow and trying to get them to understand that you can't just say I want $20 million. You got to have the audience to get $20 million. So you only get what you have. You don't have the audience. You don't run it. You don't get paid. So you'll get traditional people with traditional thinking, and you got to educate them through this process of why this is different and why it isn't as easy as just raise the rates and what that marketplace looks like. So we spent a lot of time internally trying to do that. Next, demonstrate ROI. Laser focused on that, and been working with Maggie. We're doing some really cool stuff. I mean, we've got, through Stacy and her team, we're doing brand lift studies now. And that's where, Pandora's been really good about doing these free studies. We're tapping into it for those that know our media panel. And we're doing some lift studies where we've been able to leverage big spend and be able to say, hey, we can demonstrate ROI and track that stuff. We're also working with companies like Ninth Decimal and Placed. Some of the companies you heard of. We're running a Placed campaign now out of Dallas that we just got set up with, and how that looks at campaigns and tracks people where they are and shows people entering in locations, and we get some really good metrics and data on that. So there's a lot of different subsets and data points that we can aggregate up together to kind of tackle that ROI issue, return on investment, that everybody's looking for. And I wouldn't underestimate case studies too. So we try to think about what's a good case study that we can show. How do we work some campaign that complemented their other spend to show them they've expanded on it. It's tricky because there's not a lot of good data in research that's out there, but I think we do a pretty good job spinning. Yeah, go. Long term. This is important. Next, podcasting. We talked a little bit about that, but very important for us, so we'll move on from that. Expand into video and OTT. So OTT, anybody know what OTT is?
Yeah.
Over the top. Over the top. What is it?
It's like Roku, maybe.
Yeah. Right.
Netflix, right?
Yep. So it is, I think, a game changer, I think, in terms of an opportunity for Katz. And it's like one of those things that kind of keep me up at night, but it definitely relates to our TV business and how we can expand that. What you see, if you read or follow the changes in the space, you're seeing, a lot of move away from cable to cord cutters, and smart TVs are exploding, right? So that is Samsung and Roku's and Apple TV and PlayStation, all of these products, you get little apps, right? So those little apps that come with that, and when you consume video content or television through those apps, that's over the top. And so you have a lot of big groups, big ownership groups, the O&Os all investing in their own product line. We were talking a little bit this morning, people don't see it as digital. They see it as really television in the way it's consumed, which is a very good thing for us. It's digital. It works the same way as kind of radio would digitally, but could provide a really good opportunity. So we're really looking into that, as well as video. And I often say, we get in these meetings, sometimes we're always confined to our own thinking. How are we going to serve the broadcasters that we represent? We can't think outside that box. But we have that opportunity to do that at Katz. What are other partners we can bring in? Amazon, right? Everybody notices they're building studios on the west side to produce all kinds of content. They're going to need a partner, right? And there's all kinds of opportunities with that. O&Os, right? We don't represent their terrestrial television stations in big markets, but they sure as hell are going to need a partner to aggregate up all of their CBS All Access, NBC app, ABC, and somebody to provide that from a market position. So there's a lot of opportunities in that space. We're playing with it. We're actually working. Mike has been a big help to me. Additional business, there's a lot going on around digital. And if you think about it and how people are consuming radio, smart speakers, connected cars, what you're going to see is over time, it can be debated how much, radio is going to continue to be powerful and a great medium, but it's going to be delivered differently. And that's going to create all kinds of opportunities for digital programmatic. So, we're working with some partnerships to, we're talking about building new companies and going out there and really creating an offering and getting expertise and learning. We will play in this space, and we will play it in a big way, and we're very focused on that. All right, next. In-market inventory. How do we get more? As we grow, we want to continue to do that. This is all about breaking simulcasts. So it'll be better because when they didn't sell in a lot of advertisers, it created dead air and a bad environment. As the marketplace expands, again, I mentioned they're looking at it a little bit differently. They see where they can nurture their P1s or their key audiences in a whole different way. And we're starting to see some more of that happen. I have no doubt Cox was a big move away from it. Everybody's asking about it. And no doubt the trend is to break those simulcasts and they're going to create more inventory in a much more robust way. They're all just trying to figure it out. Next. Engage progressive groups. So this has been a hot button. I talked to Joe about this quite a bit, but I was down in Austin last week, and I listened to this guy from Scripps, Rob Rackham. But man, was I impressed with them. And here's a company we don't even think about in a large way with audio. They are extremely focused on audio. They were talking about how that company is taking what's going on in smart speakers and doing things like when you ask for their station, now the personalities introduce you to the station. Welcome through your smart speaker, whatever it is. We want you to enjoy our content. Thinking about it in a whole different way and making investments. This is the company that decided they liked podcasting, so they bought Midroll. And they're producing content and want to do that. We need to be talking about them. They don't think about us in this way, and I think there's opportunities that way. Hearst, you go to Hearst's website, and you look at what they're doing, they have a bunch of different podcasting products that are out there. They're trying to figure out and get an audio space. We should be talking to them. Cox, making a lot of investments with some technology partners. They also have agencies, where I don't know where Wendy Jones is, but we write a bunch of money from Cox, because they have these small agencies regionally, and they want help in radio and what we can provide. And it turns out we're writing a sizable amount of money. They love Spotify, and they love the broadcast stations, and we make it easy. So that's something that's different. And Hubbard, I mean, they made a big investment in Podcast One, and talking to them more about what we could do. All of it builds our value and gets our broadcasters to think about us in different ways, which is really important for us, but at the same point provides opportunity for us to grow. Next. Almost done, by the way. Howard, I'm going to hold 5 minutes for you. I do love them though, so thank you. Enhanced systems. So this is, again, probably one of the least sexy parts of what we do, but it's really important. And so we're talking about, how do we make our platform better? We're actually talking to some other partners in even a more traditional space about building a more user-friendly platform to make life easier, both internally with the digital team and potentially for our sellers, so they can build packages and build proposals on their own. They don't need to necessarily always come to the planners, and we can elevate what that job is traditionally. So really focused on that. Joe's got me a ton of capital money that we're going to spend and execute in 2018. Thank you, Joe. I don't know if $5 million is a little too much, but again, really important. And candidly, it's what's allowed us to grow. Great people and great systems have got us there. Next. International expansion, right? So I want to take over the world. But no, think about it. But we are. I mean, I don't know if people realize it. We're selling Bahamas. We're selling Canada. We've got a big proposal for Australia that's up right now. We're proposing something in Japan. I mean, so we're transacting in these marketplaces as it exists today. So again, as a long-term plan, I mean, I look at certain companies. There's a company called Global, which is in the UK, and they have a broad, they kind of do what we do. They're a rep firm. They also own radio stations. It's kind of like an iHeart, right? But they have a large international footprint. So I'm kind of looking at them as a guide, and what are the things that they're doing to expand our business in a much more broader sense and generate revenue sometimes from the marketplace. But we'll do, I don't know, shy of $1 million in Canada. I mean, again, Toronto and Vancouver. And by the way, we used to just never submit, because we didn't think we had it. So, and I think that's rounding it out. I think we're kind of, what do we got? Did we get another slide? Oh. All right. So to take all of that, because those of you that know me, I'm obviously extremely proud to work at Katz, and I love this company, and I love the people that are here, and I love what we do. But I'm also really proud of the legacy that we have. And I know some of the newer folks don't necessarily know, but we were the first in newspaper, and we were the first in radio, and then we were the first in TV. We started NCC. That was the concept came out of this room, not this room, but we started that. It came about. All of these things, I often think there was inflection points throughout the 129 years when leadership got in the room and said, shit, what are we going to do? This TV thing is taking over. Like, what do we do? Do we run or do we figure out a strategy? So it's not new what we're experiencing. I think sometimes people get, kind of a little tweaked by change in the marketplace. It's only opportunity. And I promise you, the more people that I talk to on the technology side, they're all like enamored with Katz. You talk to every agency, you have these great salespeople. So I look at it as the challenge is what do we do with that? And what do we do with that opportunity to create the right products for our people to sell long term? And how do we exploit that? So I often think about Emmanuel with that bowl hat. By the way, one of our sellers in LA asked me if I sold with Emmanuel. I think it was a shame. But yes, I did not sell with Emmanuel. But again, I'm pretty proud of that legacy, and I think we should all be, and I think we should be confident in the future that I think that we have. So that's all I had. I don't know if there's any questions. Anything? Yes.
Yes. How are the margins? How are the margins with Spotify compared to our legacy business?
So I don't want to go into the numbers of that. They're not as strong, but we leverage that relationship. Spotify is often, while it's much healthier margin than our traditional business is, it's not nearly as aggressive as some of the other partners. So in many ways, I'll often think of it as a lost leader, because what we'll do is we'll leverage Spotify and its inventory, which sometimes isn't nearly, if we're looking at 25 to 40 grips that we can deliver, and Spotify's delivering 7 of those in a marketplace. So how we capitalize on our other businesses that is much higher margin base, plays into that equation. So it's a little more complicated than that. I mean, overall, we're doing 5 times what 4 to 5 times what a traditional business base is in margin. So it's kind of we leverage it.
And just one other question too. Do you focus, I realize you're doing it at a higher level, do you do much as far as mobile versus desktop, or do you kind of lump it all into the same thing?
Yeah, so it depends. There's still a struggle in agencies on, who wins the tide of how this stuff gets placed. Those kind of questions are much more coming from the digital side of the house. They really want to break down the impression. Is it mobile? Is it desktop? And they kind of ask those kind of questions. We're on average around 80-20 is where it says we can serve to mobile, we can serve to desktop. But when it comes from the broadcast side, we often say, well, why do you care? You don't buy radio, I want to buy the car, and I want to buy the home, and I want to buy the work. You might buy day parted, but you really care the delivery mechanism for that. I mean, there's stories for each, right? Mobile has its own story, desktop has its own story for engagement. But we kind of steer less around, is that important? So that goes into we can do and sell different ways, but they'll ask us 1,000 questions. There's like a checklist that the guys internally know, share a voice, region, frequency. It doesn't really matter, they just want to check it off. And usually that's one of the questions, mobile versus desktop. There's sometimes when it's important, by the way, because whether it's technology tracking and they want to, there's other metrics, KPIs that are associated with that campaign that mobile can only provide or desktop can provide, that we understand, and that's when we target it differently. But if you're just looking for a branding campaign or promote sales or whatever it is, it's irrelevant. We push beyond that.
How have you guys had a lot of success in the political arena, going after the campaigns and state parties, third party?
Challenging, right? And I think sometimes it's a lot of the political arena in digital is very, very hyper-targeted. So they want like voter registration mapped up with this. They want you to give them their inventory, give them our inventory to have them filter through their own programmatic vehicles to hyper-target. We're not in that game. We don't want to be, and it's not beneficial for us. We're not going to be putting that. So we really try to tell this radio story to that. We can target by state, so we can truly geo into the area. And we try to use some basic kind of radio terminology around what formats are more Republicans and Democrats to sell a more broader targeted audience. But it's one of those things that they're fine in radio and TV and mass appeal, and then they get into digital and want to slice the hell out of it in some way that if it's Iowa in 3 counties and you're slicing the audience, then we have 4 people, even if we're selling it at an $80 CPM, it's a $10 order. We lose money on invoicing. So we're trying to change the conversation. We're being strategic about it. And we're talking to other partners about how to come up with some different ways to push what we're doing. Yes?
In your just your personal opinion
Sales
on both sides, because I do think it's got to kind of, I would think the agencies have to morph in that direction themselves.
Yeah, I think there are totally different sides of the house, right, at an agency, digital and broadcast. Both of them have an enormous amount of expertise for their own things, and I think there's great blending that can occur, and we all have examples of healthy agencies that have done that. They've taken some people that understand audio and video, TV and radio, and they can understand the value of what that means. And as well as the digital world and how it can be, different KPIs and how to expand on technology to make things work better. So I think you're going to see a healthy mix of both of those things coming together at agencies over time. Right now you're still dealing with multiple levels of turf battles, but the problem is in agencies, the people that are moving higher up the food chain quicker come from digital. So the challenge is more for the broadcast people and we try to feed them data, how you know a lot of stuff, you understand local markets, and try to help them advocate for their spot within that environment. So there's no clear answer, but I think there's benefits from both coming together at some point. It becomes just reaching consumers and targeting people. On the sales side, I do see, I think it's by design. I mean, I flirted with this concept a lot over, should we just have people dedicated to, by the way, it's painful to retrain and re-get salespeople and put that on them with the thousands of other things we ask our salespeople to do, to go out and sell digital. That has not been easy. So sometimes I think, wow, would we be better with a smaller group? I'm at this point where I think there is enormous value to sell a lot, right? The same way the scale works for us on the digital side, I think what you're going to see is technology move the tedious pieces of the process off our desk, right? I mean, however long that happens or comes, but there'll be evolutions through internal stuff that we'll do, and we're going to take that down. And I think the job evolves into sitting with a higher level person and talking about how our assets or somebody else's assets can really, affect the goal of whatever it is they're trying to achieve. And in that conversation, the more you have in your toolbox, and not dump it all over the place, but you can understand how to strategically go to those tools to make something work and part with them, the more valuable you become. And again, that's the opportunity for Katz. And we've seen that success where we've done that. We've gotten higher up, less transactional, talking about getting to know an advertiser more and thinking about, all right, they're looking at us for ideas sometimes, and we'll bring together a potpourri of our assets to make for a campaign. And that'll proliferate.
That was the next question. Do you guys do, I imagine a bulk of your business is done through the ad agencies, but are you successful working directly at the client level?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, we have a finite amount of resources. So it takes time to go to all these clients, and so that's not really possible for us right now. We have examples of that. A lot of times we get call-ins. Sometimes they come from Spotify, and Spotify doesn't answer them, or they read something in the trades that we work with them, and I'll get a call, and we'll farm it out, and we'll work with them. So I think that happens. We have 87 universities on our streams right now, 87. I mean, schools I've never heard of that all have, most of them just call us because they, university, whatever it is, what was the Rhode Island one that we got on, that went to Spotify and ended up, and you pulled 35 grand out of it, kind of out of nowhere, which was awesome. But you have these people looking to reach us of a category. So there's some things that are happening because they want to be on the streams and they understand that value. I think there's a lot more opportunity for that, but again, it's about focus. What do we have? What can we take advantage of the most? What do we own? And for that, it's knowledge base in traditional media and media, and we own the agencies. So how do we exploit that to our benefit?
And interesting, because in the TV world, the schools, the universities, we've seen that spending decline over the past.
Well, we're getting money.
That's very interesting. So actually, from our perspective, for some of our broadcast clients, TV clients who have these digital properties, maybe there's some cross-pollination with you guys. We've seen that the TV spend go down. If you're working with some of these schools that we deal with, we've seen the spend go down, but you guys are picking up those.
I don't think it's more complicated than schools ask for research. How do you hear? What do you do? What do you consume? They all check Spotify. They all want class.
Right,
That's kind of where it is. I mean, and there's not a college kid that isn't heavily engaged in that product. Right?
No, that's interesting. I mean, again, there could be cross-pollination between.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, the goal would be, I mean, there's one digital unit that really stewards and services the broader Katz companies. I mean, we've strategically focused on audio because that's where we saw an opportunity and we've expanded on that. And we're going to continue to focus on that to drive that. But there's no doubt, the same roadmap that we've experienced, we're going to apply to television, and I think there's opportunities there too. All right? All right. Was it better than Joe's? Thank you guys, I appreciate it. I wanted to get Emmanuel with earbuds coming out of him, like,